Have a button, so let's wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plain of the internet before we go ahead and get started. We have to make sure the tubes connect themselves so that the data can transfer from one location to another location and we can all enjoy each other's company. But hold on a minute, is it working? It is working. That's great news. Let's go ahead and get started, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney at the R&R Law Group, located in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. And today, my friends, the word of the day is irresponsible. I mean, this has really been the word over the last couple days, ever since we learned that Joe Biden stole classified documents. But, irresponsible was his word, and he said that after there was just one confidential document situation with Trump. Today, we learned that there are definitely two and potentially even three different batches of documents. We're going to start off today in our first segment, listening to the announcement from Merrick Garland. He told us that they're appointing a special counsel to go investigate Joe Biden. So his little document crusade against Donald Trump is really starting to backfire against him. We're going to go through the full press conference that came out from the DOJ today because it's pretty interesting. Now, he goes through the timeline extremely quickly. So he's going to walk us through everything, from back when they found the documents back on November 4th, all the way up to the current day rapidly. But we're not going to let him do that. All right. They try to smash all this stuff together so that they can just cram it past all of us. But we are going to hit the brakes. You can see here, we have crafted a timeline that we are going to spend some time unpacking today, starting with November 4th. We're going to follow the chain of custody all the way from, this is all from Merrick Garland, from Biden's lawyers through the White House, past the election, through November 9th, when the FBI starts, Garland appoints Lausch. We're going to see there was a second cache of confidential documents that was obtained December 20th. All of that was before there was a briefing from Garland saying, we better appoint special counsel. The Republicans are coming in soon. Then we have CBS breaks the story on the 9th. January 10th, Biden makes his statement. Karine gives us a press briefing, and we covered all of that very in-depth yesterday, and she left out a ton of stuff, which we're going to get to. And then we learned today, boom, they appointed the special counsel. So we're going to go through all of that in a lot more detail before we turn it over to the White House and see what the Biden administration has to say about this and how they can justify this irresponsibility. Biden gave another pre-prepared statement. He read from a script again and explained it again. He takes it very seriously, and he's shocked. He's surprised that any of this stuff was found in his closets. He also got into it a little bit with Peter Doocy. We always like some Doocy time here. And he goes at it, and he sort of is joking about this. Is it locked up in your garage in Delaware, the second cache of documents? And they get into it. Now, we've also got some more clips of Karine. Yesterday, the media, to their credit, was just really dogpiling on her, rightfully so. And we have several clips of her again today where she is not answering basically anything. But the media is agitated, and it's always fun to watch that unfold. We've got some clips from McCarthy. We talked a little bit about McCarthy this morning on our members-only live stream on YouTube and on Locals. But this was a very interesting press conference between our new Speaker of the House, leader of the GOP in the House of Representatives, Kevin McCarthy. He was really defending Trump. He was really taking it hard against the DOJ and the media even for some of the double standards that we see in this old compare and contrast situation between old Joe, who was just a confused former vice president, and it's complicated stuff, versus the MAGA extremist insurrectionist individual who colludes with Putin and tries to wreck American democracy. Got to balance those two things out. So we'll go through all of that, all in the first segment, and you can see it's going to be a lot and a lot of fun. Then we're going to turn our attention over to Twitter Files 14. Let's get this corrected right here. I had a little bit of a mistake there. It's not 13, it's 14. We've got Twitter File 14. We already covered 13. That was Alex Berenson. And this one is covering RussiaGate. And you can see here this fella, you may know him lovingly as Pencil Neck. You can see it there. It looks pretty, resembling of the moniker. But we're going to go through all of these. They came over from Matt Taibbi. You can follow him, of course, on Twitter at Matt Taibbi. And there's just a lot to get to. So a lot of thick documents. We'll read through all of them. RussiaGate was a big, big deal because this sort of, wrecked the first part of Trump's presidency. It sort of undermined everything. They said he was illegitimate and that he was, should be impeached for his collusion with RussiaGate, right? It was all just a giant scam. So we'll go through all of those again in full detail. And that means we've got a lot to get to. So if you want to be a part of the fun, my friends, the best place to do that is by going over to our amazing community. There are some awesome people chatting away over there. Our friends Aggie Martin's in the house, John McGarvey, Dan Slick's over there. Shout out to C. Reed. We've got Paul Minot, who's memeing up the fort for us. Uncle Shane, Facts Matter. We've got a whole crew over there. And it's a lot of fun. I see Bonnie's there as well. And so we do member-only morning streams. And so come and check us out, watchingthewatchers.locals.com, or join on YouTube. Click that join channel button, and you can get in on the same live shows. Also, our friends over at 4patriots.com, if you're looking for survival food and survival gear, they're very supportive of the program. 4patriots.com. Use code Robert to get 10% off anything in the store. You also can go to Goldco. Go to robertlikesgold.com. Protect your savings with gold and silver. You can get a very nice initial offer. If you go to robertlikesgold.com, you can request a free kit. And of course, our law firm. Anybody charged with crimes in the state of Arizona, that's what our law firm does. R&R Law Group online at rrlawaz.com. We offer free case evaluations. And we have a mission to help good people charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope. All right. And so let's get right into the meat and potatoes of the day, because we've got a lot to get to, and it's going to be a good one. Joe Biden's document war backfires. He really wanted to take out Donald Trump over those confidential files down at Mar-a-Lago. A special prosecutor was appointed. This was the Democrats' home run. But guess what? Now, President Biden himself has a special prosecutor appointed to him. Man, the Democrats are upset about this one. You can see Merrick Garland, the U.S. Attorney General, came out today, and he gave us a very, very brief press conference. It was about 5 minutes. He spent about 2 of those minutes talking about the other individuals who are going to be working on this case. But very quickly, he gave us a compressed timeline. So we're going to do 2 things here. We're going to listen to him explain all of these dates, right? This is what the timeline actually looks like. Okay, so just a preview here. We're going to dissect this a lot more in detail in a second. But this is how Merrick Garland ultimately explains it. It happens very quickly, and he jumps in afterwards to the special counsel that he's appointing and to the U.S. attorney who is already working on the case. But we don't have questions about those guys. We're not really concerned about who's working on the case as much as we are as how did this whole situation unfold? Why are we just hearing about this? We've got a lot of questions about who knew what and when and how, and we're going to see if we can tease any of this out. Now, the audio on this clip is bad. Everybody's audio. Somebody, forgot to turn the mic button on for like the entire news corporation out there. And they had a difficult time with it, but the audio gets fixed right after he starts speaking. Now you can see this is Merrick Garland. To his right, we have Mr. Lausch, who was the U.S. attorney from the Northern District of Chicago, who was the person who was involved in most of this investigation up until this point, which is now when it gets handed off to the new special prosecutor. Let's listen in.
I'm here today to announce the appointment of Robert Hur as a special counsel pursuant to Department of Justice regulations governing such matters. In keeping with those regulations, I have today notified the designated members of each House of Congress of the
It's going to get better.
I'm joined today by John Lausch, U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Illinois.
What's up, John?
Who conducted the initial investigation into the matter that I will describe today. On the evening of November 4th, 2022.
All right, we are going to go through these dates. We are going to break this down, but I want you to listen to how stacked up they are. They do this intentionally. Listen.
The National Archives Office of Inspector General contacted a prosecutor at the Department of Justice. It informed him that the White House had notified the archives that documents bearing classification markings were identified at the office of the Penn Biden Center for Diplomacy and Global Engagement, located in Washington, D.C.
There's a lot of names there.
That office was not authorized for storage of classified documents.
Uh-oh.
The prosecutor was also advised that those documents had been secured in an archives facility. On November 9th, the FBI commenced an assessment consistent with standard protocols to understand whether classified information had been mishandled in violation of federal law. On November 14th, pursuant to Section 600.2B of the Special Counsel Regulations, I assigned U.S. Attorney Lausch to conduct an initial investigation to inform my decision whether to appoint a special counsel. Mr. Lausch has served as the U.S. Attorney in Chicago since 2017. Before that, he spent more than a decade as an assistant U.S. Attorney in that same office.
Great.
I selected him to conduct the initial investigation because I was confident his experience would ensure that it would be done professionally and expeditiously.
We're a minute 30 goes into bio.
On December 20th,
President
Biden's personal counsel informed Mr. Lausch that additional documents bearing classification markings were identified in the garage of the president's private residence in Wilmington, Delaware.
The garage?
President Biden's counsel informed Mr. Lausch that those documents were among other records from the period of the president's service as vice president.
That's the second batch.
The FBI went to the location and secured those documents.
Did they raid it?
On January 5th, 2023, Mr. Lausch briefed me on the results of his initial investigation and advised me that further investigation by a special counsel was warranted. Based on Mr. Lausch's initial investigation, I concluded that, under the special counsel regulations, it was in the public interest to appoint a special counsel. In the days since, while Mr. Lausch continued the investigation, the department identified Mr. Hur for appointment as special counsel. This morning, President Biden's personal counsel called Mr. Lausch and stated that an additional document bearing classification markings was identified at the president's personal residence in Wilmington, Delaware.
Where? Garage?
When I first contacted Mr. Lausch about this matter, he said he could lead the initial investigation, but would be unable to accept any longer-term assignment.
He's retiring.
Because he would be leaving the department in early 2023 for the private sector. U.S. Attorney Lausch and his team of prosecutors and agents have conducted this initial investigation with professionalism.
Yes, we love them.
And
They're
speed.
amazing.
I am grateful to them.
Yeah.
Earlier today, I signed an order appointing Robert Hur as special counsel for the matter I've just described. The document authorizes him to investigate whether any person or entity violated the law in connection with this matter. The special counsel will not be subject to the day-to-day supervision of any official of the department, but he must comply with the regulations, procedures, and policies of the department. Mr. Hur has a long and distinguished career as a prosecutor.
Okay,
In 2003, he joined the department's criminal division, where he worked on counterterrorism,
all right, we're going to learn all about him.
Matters.
We'll scroll through his
From
bio.
2007 until 2014, Mr. Hur served as an assistant U.S. attorney for the District of Maryland, where he prosecuted matters ranging from violent crime to financial fraud. In 2017, Mr. Hur rejoined the department as the Principal Associate Deputy Attorney General. In 2018, he was nominated and confirmed to serve as the U.S. Attorney for the District of Maryland. As U.S. Attorney, he supervised some of the department's more important national security, public corruption, and other high-profile matters. I will ensure that Mr. Hur receives all the resources he needs to conduct his work.
Great.
As I have said
He's
before,
almost done.
I strongly believe that the normal processes of this department can handle all investigations with integrity. But under the regulations, the extraordinary circumstances here require the appointment of a special counsel for this matter. This appointment underscores for the public the department's commitment to both independence and accountability in particularly sensitive matters, and to making decisions indisputably guided only by the facts and the law. I am confident that Mr. Hur will carry out his responsibility in an even-handed and urgent manner and in accordance with the highest traditions of this department. Thank you all.
Mr. Garland,
about this investigation, sir.
Questions? No, just like the president. He beelines it out of the front door. Now, I know how painful that was to watch, and I know how difficult it was to sort of listen to him drone on through a big speech. But what I want to do is break that down just a little bit more. So let's take a quick look and see if we can just parse this out bit by bit, because I want to go through the timeline and listen to what Mr. Garland said, all right? The very first part of this entire conversation, he said that all of this started on November 4th. That's when something happened. Biden's lawyers or somebody contacted the White House. The White House, he said this very quickly, the White House contacted the National Archives. The National Archives then contacted the DOJ prosecutor. So let's cue this up and listen.
To what Mr. Garland did for former President Trump.
We're not going to listen to the whole thing again. It happens very quickly.
I'm here today to announce the appointment of Robert Hur as a special counsel pursuant to Department of Justice regulations governing such matters. In keeping with those regulations,
now this is the first batch.
The designated members of each House of Congress of the appointment. I'm joined today by John Lausch, the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Illinois, who conducted the initial investigation into the matter that I will describe today. On the evening of November 4th, 2022, the National Archives Office of Inspector General contacted a prosecutor at the Department of Justice.
Okay, you can see that, right? OIG contacted the DOJ. How? Why?
It informed him that the White House had notified the archives that documents bearing classification markings were identified at the office of the Penn Biden Center for Diplomacy and Global Engagement, located in Washington, D.C.
All right, so very little evidence now about who those lawyers were and how it made its way back over to the White House, right? Open questions about that. It just sort of springs up out of nowhere. The National Archives, the Office of the Inspector General, they hear from the White House. We don't know who called, where it came from, how it got to the White House, or more specifically, who the lawyers are. Now, I've seen names bandied about who these lawyers are, but this currently has been the most amorphous thing that we've heard about from the administration, right? We know who Special Counsel Richard Stauber is. Okay, we know who all these people are, but who are Biden's personal lawyers? These people who are rummaging through boxes, moving boxes around, and inadvertently stumbling across all these classified confidential information. Oh, very convenient, right? And it's very convenient that it happens November 4th. And then you'll notice that things that Merrick Garland just sort of flashes over are things like the election. Now, we have that noted here because that was a pretty dang important part of this whole conversation. If they found all of this on November 4th, as he just acknowledged, why was there no disclosure of any of this from the most transparent administration ever on any time before November 8th? Well, it's because they wanted to keep this buried. This was something that was a catastrophe, according to them, for America, for the world, for all of our enemies, all of our allies. They couldn't trust our, sanctity of our confidentiality anymore, and so on and so forth. So Garland gives us a lot there without saying much. He says, okay, this is how it happened. But we know there's a lot of missing pieces to the data right now. Who's Biden's lawyer? Who contacted the White House? Who did the White House how did they get in touch with the OIG, in other words? And when did Karine Jean-Pierre know about this? As we theme throughout this timeline, when did Karine know about it? Here's Garland.
That office was not authorized for storage of classified documents.
Illegal.
The prosecutor was also advised that those documents had been secured in an archives facility.
So here, we're still here. White House notifies the National Archives, goes over to the prosecutor. Prosecutor says, okay, let's get our hands on those documents. Prosecutor, who we don't know who this person is either, right? Who is this person? That's not Richard Lausch or Robert or Lausch from Chicago. So we don't know who Biden's lawyer is. We don't know who at the White House got the call. We do know who the OIG is, presumably, right? Somebody could identify that person, but who was the prosecutor? Prosecutor then is working with the OIG, and they are settling all of this up. They say the documents have been secured. Don't worry about it. Everything is safe.
On November 9th, the FBI commenced an assessment.
November 9th, FBI starts. Very interesting. The day after the election, the FBI starts on that one. Okay, that's a Wednesday. Why did the FBI start their investigation on a Wednesday? Why didn't they start it on that Monday before the election, huh? Soon as all of this came skidding in there. Very, very interesting. Go back to Garland.
Consistent with standard protocols to understand whether classified information had been mishandled in violation of federal law. On November 14th,
here we are,
pursuant to Section 600.2B of the Special Counsel Regulations,
citing some authority,
I assigned U.S. Attorney Lausch to conduct an initial investigation to inform my decision whether to appoint a special counsel.
Okay, so at this point, Joe Biden has to know about it, right? This is all found on November 4th. We are now 10 days after the fact where they assign Lausch to the whole saga. We're several days after the election, And they're still, presumably they've briefed this thing. Biden's lawyers know, Karine knows, everybody knows about it. FBI knows about it. They have Merrick Garland, who's in the president's cabinet, knows about it. They've gone so far as to assign a specific lawyer now to it. And this guy presumably is not the same prosecutor who got the files in the first place, right? The OIG contacted the DOJ and then they had conversations about what to do with it. So then it works its way up to Garland. Then he appoints somebody else 10 days later.
Mr. Lausch has served
All right, we
as
know
the
all
U.S.
about
attorney and
Lausch.
assistant U.S. attorney in that same office. I selected him to conduct the initial investigation because I was confident he informed Mr. Lausch the barrage of the president's documents. President Biden's personal confidence, his experience would ensure that it would be done professionally and expeditiously.
Here.
On December 20th, President
Batch
Biden's
2.
personal counsel informed Mr. Lausch that additional documents bearing classification markings were identified in the garage of the president's private residence in Wilmington, Delaware.
All right, so there is the whole second batch of documents. That comes over from Merrick Garland. Here's the second batch, personal residence, Wilmington, Delaware. And again, Biden's personal counsel, somebody who we don't know who that is yet, we're still waiting for an actual identification on that individual, and they know who it is, contacted this guy, Lausch, and said, uh-oh, guess what? That's on December 20th. Second batch of documents. And it's in a garage. All right. So for everybody who was saying, Trump's Mar-a-Lago strip club resort, whatever, down there in Miami, whatever, they are, I'm sure, very outraged about this one too, right? They have to be going nuts. Now, here's a picture of Joe Biden backing into his garage in Wilmington. And here's what it looks like.
You think I'm kidding? I'm not kidding. So I'm excited about it.
So right there, you can see right next to that window shade or that lamp shade right there. I think some confidential documents over there. I think I see them. Probably a couple stacks right next to Hunter Biden's private box. Don't look inside. The one scribbled with the Sharpie. Hunter Biden's personal things. Joe Biden's like, no, we don't look in that one. All right. Look at this, super slow-mo. Those illegal documents might be in the back of the trunk. I don't know. He's just slowly backing them in, thieving away from America in ultra slow-mo, robbing us of
I'm excited about it.
Most secretive documents. Unbelievable. Our president. Now, you can see it doesn't look like it's all that secure. It seems like you might just be able to sort of jimmy the handle on one of those garage doors and kind of just pop that whole thing up there and then hop in there and get all those Ukraine documents or whatever he had. So that's the second batch. Now, you'll notice that this was found. We don't know when it was found. That's actually another good question. So Biden's counsel notified them on the 20th, but found date, we don't know. So we'll keep an eye on that one. But if it was December 20th, we can follow this green arrow and ask ourselves why, when Karine Jean-Pierre on January 11th, during the press conference that we had yesterday, why didn't she mention number 2, the second cache of documents? We spent about 30 minutes listening to her yesterday, and her entire press briefing, she was getting bombarded with questions from the press about this. And in fact, one fella asked her, said, can you sort of tell us that your inventory has been completed? Like, have you done an audit of Sleepy Joe? Because he's very forgetful. We know his son left guns all over the place and his laptop all over the place. Is Joe sort of, falling into that same thing happening here? Where are the other documents? Have you done an inventory? And she said nothing about that. She said, well, I'm not going to say anything further. She must have known that there was a whole second cache and she didn't mention it at all. So for the most transparent administration, for the people who said that they were going to be forthcoming and ask for help, correcting their mistakes and all of that, this is the second time that they have been openly dishonest. Okay. She could have come clean about those December 20th documents yesterday. The dam had already broken and she didn't say a thing about it, even when she was asked point blank about it. And we covered that on yesterday's show if you missed any of that. So they knew about this stuff back on 12/20 and they still lied about it. Even so much as lying about it yesterday. So we go forward and we can see that Merrick Garland's going to tell us that Lausch ultimately then briefs Garland.
President Biden's counsel informed Mr. Lausch that those documents were among other records from the period of the president's service as vice president.
VP.
The FBI went to the location and secured those documents. On January 5th, 2023,
right here,
Mr. Lausch briefed me on the results of his initial investigation and advised me that further investigation by a special counsel was warranted.
Okay, so on that date then, why didn't you disclose that to the whole world? On January 5th, they are well into their investigation. That's a Thursday. They could have discussed it on Thursday. They could have discussed it on Friday. They could have told any of us about that. That's when they decided a special counsel was needed. They're just announcing the special counsel appointment today on the 12th. So they're going to say, oh, we needed time to go and find the right person after we decided we needed one. You know, we need this new position. Now we have to go find somebody who's going to fill that position. Okay, but they could have told the rest of the world. They could have told all of us about this. That was on January 5th. At this point, they have still been completely dishonest. They have not told us anything about it. Now, we'll go fast forward with Garland, but let's fill in the dates first because he skips over all of this. This most transparent administration, the people who are going to be so open and honest with all of us, who are not going to be like those stonewalling Trumpers, they have been lying this entire time, and they weren't forthcoming about any of it. It wasn't until CBS broke the story on January 9th that we covered here that they told us, they reported that a U.S. attorney, all of this stuff had been going on. Right? So they were openly sweeping this under the rug for months. Joe Biden then makes a statement yesterday about it on the 10th, 2 days ago. He says that in Mexico, oh, I'm surprised about all this. I'm so shocked. I have no idea. I can't remember anything. Then we went through the entire press briefing with Karine Jean-Pierre yesterday, where she lied by omission about what they knew. Back to Garland.
Mr. Lausch's initial investigation, I concluded that under the special counsel regulations, it was in the public interest to appoint a special counsel. In the days since, while Mr. Lausch continued the investigation, the department identified Mr. Hur for appointment as special counsel. This morning, President Biden's personal counsel called Mr. Lausch again and stated that an additional document bearing classification markings was identified at the president's personal residence in Wilmington, Delaware.
Where? Okay, so that must not be part of the garage batch, right? Garage batch was number 2. This new document is number 3. What is it? Where was it? Just learned about that one today. All right, so Karine Jean-Pierre gets a little bit of an excuse on that one. Okay, we're not going to hold her accountable for the dishonesty on that one, but definitely for the December 20th batch of documents. They knew about it.
When I first contacted Mr. Lausch about this matter, he said he could lead the initial investigation,
but then he
would be on 20 and speed. I am grateful to them. Appointing Robert Hur, the special counsel, will not be subject to the day-to-day supervision of any official. All
right, so that's it for them. Now, that is Garland, right? He has now appointed the special counsel. He doesn't answer any questions about anything. And we know that Hur was appointed. A little bit more about this guy. He's currently, I think, in the private sector, got a massive bio, right? So we went through Jack Smith's bio, who is the special counsel who's prosecuting Trump. And this guy has a also very impressive bio, no joke. He has prosecuted white collar crimes. He's got background, 48th U.S. attorney out of Maryland, all sorts of public corruption crimes, worked for all sorts of AG's offices. Somebody who also worked for Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, right? Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. Now that guy carries with his name a just massive ton of baggage. And so some people are concerned that maybe he has been poisoned some way by that relationship. Now, I don't know. He's an accomplished trial lawyer, they say, done all sorts of stuff. He was the Assistant U.S. Attorney District of Maryland, 2007 to 2014. Went to Stanford, worked over at the Ninth Circuit, Also went to Harvard, of course. He works against Asian American hate crimes and is a member of all sorts of different boards, right? So presumably he's going to be a pretty aggressive prosecutor, and we'll see what he does. Now, more will be revealed on that one. But you can see all of the complexities that Merrick Garland just sort of flashed over. We know that the administration knew about this a long time ago, and there was a lot of development here. They could have told us about all of this at any time. Should have done it before the election, but they hid it. And even though they're pretending to be very transparent, the FBI just conveniently starts their assessment the day after the election. The lawyers conveniently disclose the documents just a few days before the election, so it just kind of glosses right over that whole thing. Garland assigns an individual. Nobody knows about it. Biden's personal lawyers are totally involved, finding different documents all over the place. We're asking, where else are they looking? Does anybody know what the total list of locations they're looking? How far back are they going? How did the documents get there? Is there going to be any follow through? A lot of questions, but we'll see if they start providing any answers. My guess is no. More likely, the Republicans are going to have to dig into it. Of course, we're going to hear from Kevin McCarthy in a minute. But let's turn our attention over to the White House and see how they explain all of this right after we talk about gold. We're going to hear from Joe Biden. He's going to explain it. We're going to jump into Karine. We're going to hear from Joe talking about his secure garage. But we also have to remember it's very important to secure our savings. If you have an IRA, for example, or 401k, or a savings account, things are scary out there. The Biden administration, this fella here, has printed more money in the past 2 years than the previous 100 years combined. The national debt hit a record $30+ trillion. Inflation is the highest we've seen since 1982. It's only a matter of time before the house of cards comes crashing down. If you have retirement savings, your money could be at serious risk. Talk to my friends at Goldco. See how you can protect your retirement with gold and silver before it's too late. Go to robertlikesgold.com. They will give you $10,000 or more in free silver when you open a qualifying account. That's robertlikesgold.com. Goldco, A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. They're good friends of this show. Thank you for supporting them by checking them out at robertlikesgold.com. All right, and so now let's listen to what Joe Biden says about all of this. The White House continues to reel from the Biden confidential documents dilemma. And the president was asked about this and provided a brief statement explaining what happened.
But as I said earlier this week, people know I take classified documents and classified materials seriously. I also said we're cooperating fully and completely with the Justice Department's review. As part of that process, my lawyers reviewed other places where documents from my time as vice president were stored, and they finished the review last night. They discovered a small number of documents of classified markings in storage areas and file cabinets in my home and my personal library.
File cabinets in personal library in his home. Doesn't sound very secure. Sounds a little bit irresponsible. Did the FBI take those documents out of those file cabinets and dump them all over the floor for their photography class?
This was done in the case of the Biden Penn. This was done in the case of the Biden Penn Center. The Department of Justice was immediately notified, and the lawyers arranged for the Department of Justice to take possession of the document. So we're going to see all this unfold. I'm confident. Thank you very much.
Yikes. So Biden delivers a statement found in a filing cabinet in his home office, which is basically as secure as this right here. Listen, that's it right there. Listen to that. Confidential documents. You walk in, you're like, hey, I'm from China. I work for the CCP. I'm going to rob all of your national security secrets. Joe Biden's asleep. He's got ice cream drooled all over himself. And somebody just walks in and just opens up the filing cabinet. Oh, perfect. Here it is. I got all the confidential documents right here. All right. So that doesn't sound good. Now, for somebody who was screaming from the rooftops about what a lunatic Donald Trump was, you'd expect a little bit better, wouldn't you? In fact, Peter Doocy did, rightfully so. And he got into it with the president outside some speaking event. Ducey from Fox News says, Mr. President, you said it was very irresponsible to handle classified documents improperly, but it looks like you were doing that all over the place. Can you explain, sir?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President,
Okay.
classified material next to your Corvette. What were you thinking?
Corvette?
Let me, I'm going to get a chance to speak on all this, God willing, soon. But as I said earlier this week, people, and by the way, my Corvette's in a locked garage. Okay, so it's not like you're sitting out in the street.
Not a funny
But
joke.
at any rate,
It was in a locked garage.
yes, as well as my Corvette. But as I said earlier this week, people know I take classified documents and classified material seriously. I also
Then why were you joking about your Corvettes? Do you think that's what a secured facility is, Mr. President?
said we're cooperating fully and completely with the Justice Department's review. As part of that process, my lawyers reviewed other places where documents in my
we read that. We already heard
cabinets
that.
in my home and my personal library.
Yeah, we heard that.
The Department of Justice was immediately, as was done, the Department of Justice was immediately possession of the document. So we're going to see all this unfold. I'm confident. Thank you very much.
Look at that media. Look at them. Oh, man, they are unhappy about it because they got made to be fools. Big time. Big time. I mean, there's probably not a bigger political issue outside maybe of the, COVID stuff where these people latched into this issue so hard. You go fishing and you get one that just bites so hard. You're like, oh, there's nothing you can do. Sorry. They did that. Sorry, little fishy. You're mine now. Same thing happened here. Now, the problem is they don't, they're realizing that was not a good bait because it's now they're on, their guys now under the microscope. It's not working out well for them. But watch Ducey and the reaction to the Corvette joke. Oh my gosh, brutal.
Mr. President,
Okay.
classified material next to your Corvette. What were you thinking?
Look at her.
Let me, I'm going to get a chance to speak on all this, God willing, soon. But as I said earlier this week, people, and by the way, my Corvette's in a locked garage. Okay, so it's not like you're sitting out in the street.
So
But at any rate,
was in a locked garage.
yes, as well as my Corvette. But as I said
Well,
earlier
that
this
does
week, people know I take classified.
That does it. I guess everything is secure then, as long as it's in a locked garage. Unbelievable. They were screaming that Trump was ruining the whole world, and it justified the FBI raiding his residence. Later on in the White House, Karine Jean-Pierre came out for a press briefing, and Ducey was there, ready to go. Ducey from Fox asks Karine Jean-Pierre, what about those visitor logs, Karine? I mean, it's not just the Penn Biden Center. If these were found in boxes in a garage in Delaware, in Wilmington, should we maybe see the Wilmington visitor logs so we can see who is coming in and out of there? Would that be a good idea?
Of visitors to the Wilmington house.
Peter, you've asked this question, or your colleagues have asked this question before. Let's not forget what we did here in this White House.
What'd you do?
We instituted something that the last administration got rid of, which is putting out the White House, making sure that there was a White House log, extensive White House log, so the American people got to see.
Okay, but for-
Unsecured classified material.
Again, I am telling you, we did something that the last administration got rid of, which is instituting the White House logs.
What about
Did
Wilmington?
you ask the last administration why they got rid of the White House
I
logs?
was the campaign
Okay,
reporter
let's go.
Wilmington.
for Joe
Let's
Biden in
go.
Wilmington.
Well,
We
did
don't
Fox
know who
did?
had
Go ahead,
access.
go ahead, go ahead.
We have the records from the Delaware residents.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was
Why not?
calling the gentleman who wanted to ask a question that
She goes from Ducey, unbelievable. She goes from Ducey, who's asking about the Wilmington visitor logs, where the confidential information was, to another guy who says, okay, so just want to follow up on the Wilmington visitor logs. And she says, no, not you, the person who's not going to ask about the Wilmington visitor logs.
material.
Again, I am telling you, we did something that the last administration got rid of, which is instituting the White House logs. Did you ask the last administration why they got rid of the White House
I
logs?
was the campaign
Okay,
reporter
let's go.
covering Joe
Let's
Biden in
go.
Wilmington.
Well,
We
then
don't
Fox
know who
did.
had
Go ahead.
access.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
We have the records from the Delaware residents.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was calling.
So the other guy says, what about Delaware then? If you don't have Wilmington, can we get Delaware? She goes, no visitor logs. Sheesh.
The gentleman who wanted to ask a question that was not related to this. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Karine, I appreciate it. I know I'm a little behind the news cycle here, but I want to go back to yesterday's.
All right. Yes. Back to yesterday. Do you have the visitor logs? Just kidding. That wasn't the question. Should have been. All right. So here is a couple other clips. We're going to go a little bit faster with Karine today because we sort of overindulged yesterday. I'm aware of this. The media cannot believe the White House is being so obtuse about the release of information surrounding Biden's confidential stolen documents. And they're letting Karine know their opinion.
And so I'm not going to go beyond what the president said, and I'm not going to go beyond what the lawyers say. I have to go around. You've asked me about, you've asked me,
Then that there's going to be a limit in transparency, public, non-legal transparency, and what can be shared and said by this way.
I disagree. I disagree, Ed. There has not been a limit of transparency. There has not been a limit of transparency. That I will disagree with you on that, Justin.
2 months.
Justin.
Thanks, Chris.
Do you hear the guy in the background? You sat on it for 2 months. Listen to this.
There has not been a limit of transparency. That I will disagree with you on that, Justin.
2 months.
Justin.
Thanks, Chris.
2 months, Karine. There has not been a lack of transparency. 2 months. These documents were floating around. Nobody had any idea about them until CBS broke it. You didn't even come out and tell us about it. CBS did. Very dishonest. All right, we have another clip here. Now, of course, a question is about any additional documents. Holy moly. This question was asked yesterday, and she says, well, I'm not going to add anything to the additional statements. She should have known about the 1220 documents because Merrick Garland just confirmed to us that they knew about them at that time. That's when President Biden's personal lawyer sent it over to Mr. Lausch, the U.S. attorney from Chicago. So the DOJ knew about it. The second batch, not the third batch, the second batch. The third batch she also knew about, presumably, if she got the memo that came in from the phone call this morning. But she was dishonest by omission yesterday. Let's listen to this one today.
Thanks, Karine. In the statement from the special counsel that the second set of documents said the lawyers have completed the ongoing review by the president's legal team last night. Does that mean there are no other locations where documents could be stored? There's no other search underway at this moment in time for documents?
Do we have them all?
So as I'm just going to, again, that statement pretty much lays it out that they have, as part of the lawyers, they look through the places where documents could have been stored, and the counsel's office released a statement on that. Now it is in the hands of the special counsel.
So we should assume that it has been completed?
You should assume that it's been completed,
Okay,
yes.
no more
I
documents.
just want to score something that Chris was asking about. The review was underway when you guys gave a detailed statement about the first set of documents. The review was underway when the president spoke about the first set of documents.
Yes.
You're now saying that you didn't talk about the second set of documents discovered almost a month prior because a review was underway. I don't understand. It doesn't make any sense.
No,
The
I think
review was underway the entire time. The only difference was that reporters had information on the first set of documents, and therefore you chose to exclude the second set of documents until reporters got information on the second set of documents.
Well, let me unconfuse you.
No, it's not that confusing. Hold on, just to make sure that we're not confused and that Miss Karine is not confused as well, because we have it all timelined here. What that young gentleman is asking about is the gap in time between two different dates. Of course, this 1220 date. The 1220 date is the date that the second batch of documents was discovered. And there's a pretty big gap between that date, and disclosure, which happened inadvertently by CBS on January 9th. Now, their justification for this was that they are investigating. So we can't disclose any of that stuff, right? Oh, we can't tell you about that. Well, why didn't they come out on January 5th then? Or January 6th? Or January 8th? And tell us that a special counsel was going to be appointed? They got caught, man. That's why they're now talking about it. Is because CBS broke the story. Or, this was all sort of crafted to be leaked out, sort of right around this time because the Republicans are back in the House. But they were dishonest on this for a several months, and that's what he's asking about. How can you possibly say that you were transparent when you sat on the first story for months until after the election, and then even after the second one, you already appointed a U.S. attorney? Like, you could have told us about all of these things. In other words, you could have made an announcement about a U.S. attorney being assigned to the president. You could have made an announcement about the FBI starting an assessment of the president. And they didn't. So he's asking about that. And so Miss Karine is going to help us get unconfused, because I actually could use the help. I'm looking forward to this little lesson, because I don't actually understand how all of that was an honest and transparent thing. Hopefully she fills us in here. Let's pick back up.
I don't understand. It doesn't make any sense.
No,
The
I
review
think
was underway the entire time. The only difference was that reporters had information on the first set of documents.
Help us,
and therefore
Karine.
chose to exclude the second set of documents until reporters got information on the second set of documents.
Well, let me unconfuse you
Right.
for a second, Phil. Look, we are trying to do this by the book. And I said yesterday, this was under review by the Department of Justice. And the process is as such. When the president's lawyers realized that the documents existed, that they were there, they reached out to the archives. They reached out to the Department of Justice. Rightfully so, may I add. That is what you're supposed to do.
Legally.
As lawyers, that's what they did.
They have
and
to.
they have fully been cooperative.
They have to, because they found documents outside of a secure facility. So if they would have been in possession of those documents outside of a secure facility, it would have been illegal. So they had to turn those puppies back in. And the question was, why were they out of there? And why were they in Joe Biden's Corvette garage?
Cooperating with the Department of Justice. And again, I said this earlier in answering a question. You heard from the Attorney General. He said shortly after the documents were discovered, that we did outreach. The president's lawyers did outreach to the Department of Justice and archivists.
Nobody's questioning that. That's not what we're asking about. We're asking about.
I'm telling you that there's a process. I just laid out what the process is,
I'm asking
and I'm
about
telling you
the
that
public
we
process
were
of-
trying to do this by the book, and it was an ongoing process. I'm not going to get beyond that, but that is how this works.
How can you say this
Yeah.
was transparent
Okay.
when you've sat on this information for more than 2 months?
Thank you, Karine.
Doesn't answer. How can you possibly say this was transparent when you sat on this for more than 2 months?
But that is how this works.
How can you say this
Yeah.
was transparent
Thank
when
you,
you've
Karine.
sat on this information for more than 2 months?
Thank you, Karine.
Because they just say it, because they say they're trying to do it by the book. That's why it is transparent. But the media just doesn't let her have it. Again, they say, okay, though, but seriously though, Karine, like, you know that you're not transparent. Like, he said you're not, he said you're not, she said you're not. I'm just going to make sure you know. Like, for real, Karine, not transparent at all.
Just one more, Karine. Do you acknowledge that the fact that the White House did not reveal this to the public, despite the fact that you've known about it for months, undercuts the president's promise of being transparent with the American?
But here's the thing. They were transparent. There was
Not to us.
transparency in doing what you're supposed to do when these items were discovered.
Not with the American people.
Look,
Not with
I'm
us.
here standing in front of you answering these questions.
3 months later.
The president took 2 questions this week on this. You've heard, wait, let me just answer. You've heard from the White House counsel who put out multiple statements on this. And so, again, this is an ongoing process. We want to respect the process. And we have laid out very clearly what occurred.
But you didn't tell us about it. That's the problem. You were pounding your fists on the table, screaming from the rooftops hysterically for months about Donald Trump and what a catastrophe it is and how important it is we know about this, and how the ODNI, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, and all these very smart people have to do damage assessments to see what a debacle this whole thing was. Every day, Mark Elias and others and Andrew Weissman on Twitter tweeting, remove him from office. It was hyperventilation season for almost an entire quarter. But this one is just like, no. We're just going to, hey, phone call. Oh, those documents. Oh, yeah. I know where those went. I forgot about those. I thought the cleaning lady took them. All of them just kind of get swept back into place. Not a big deal. Media's not buying it for a minute because they shouldn't. Now, the Republicans, of course, are going to dive in on this and dogpile, as they rightfully should, because this is outrageous. And the most egregious thing, since the Civil War, as the White House likes to say. Kevin McCarthy is in charge of the United States House of Representatives, and he sort of woke up today in this clip with a little bit of an extra zest. He sort of got that gavel energy. He's walking around like, oh, yeah. Just carrying that big gavel around, like, gavel swag or something. And here, he's going to walk us through his opinion on the Biden confidential documents dilemma when he's speaking with the press. The new Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, says, this Joe Biden confidential documents thing is kind of a disaster for you guys.
No, because from one standpoint, they knew the documents were there. They actually asked President Trump to put another lock on them, so they were locked. You look at President Biden. He wasn't president. He was vice president. He held these in different locations right out in the open. He criticized President Trump. Did he utilize the Justice Department to raid President Trump? Did you think that was right? Yeah. They knew this has happened to President Biden before the election, but they kept it a secret from the American public. He goes on 60 Minutes, criticizes President Trump, even knowing what he has done, and he wasn't president at the time. Now we find another location that it's at, but he refused to answer. His press secretary won't answer the questions.
Nothing.
You watched them leak photos of sitting out files of President Trump. Where's the photos of President Biden's documents?
Where are all the FBI agents raiding his Wilmington residence and his Delaware residence and all of these other locations and houses?
Where are those photos at? He knowingly knew this happened going into election, going into interviews. This is what makes America not trust their government. You cannot have one form of law because somebody philosophically has a different opinion than you, and you can't use the Justice Department to go after people that are politically different as well. It has to be equal across. And
justice is blind.
What's happened with President Biden time and again. You go from a laptop saying it not only that it wasn't true, but utilizing your own friends to go into companies to tell them to say the same thing, to try to knock down information, to try to make sure the New York Post story couldn't be printed. You should be offended by that. You are of the press.
Right.
You should be allowed to write even when you knew it was true.
But Kevin, their team was winning. They got to shut up your side. They got to quiet all the Republicans. That's why they're not offended. They're now offended that the playing field might be a little bit more even-handed.
Yes, sir.
Kevin McCarthy, you can see, with a little bit of swagger out there, and he's talking about what happened with Trump. They went down there, they laid all the photos out, right? They went out to all of the different boxes and they picked out the worst things and they just spread them all out there so they could take these photographs and just retweet them, right? That's what the FBI does, right? It's just, bunch of clowns there. But the point is, they didn't do that for Joe. They took a whole different tact with him because he's their guy. Now, McCarthy says, that's great. We got a special counsel. Who cares? But Congress and the new Republican Party must investigate.
Let him finish.
Sorry about that. Some of these audios. Sorry about the headaches when the audio explodes. When I download these clips, sometimes they're just really elevated. Let's see what we've got here.
Let him finish.
Do you see this matter regarding the classified documents found in President Biden's home going before that committee?
I see.
Remember, we got the weaponization of government committee that we read through all yesterday and talked about the passage of some other efforts in the House. They're asking about this. Could this little confidential documents thing like nestle under one of these other committees?
Could go from that committee or others, but I think Congress has to investigate this. Here's an individual that's been in office for more than 40 years.
Committee.
Here's an individual that sat on 60 Minutes that was so concerned about President Trump's documents locked in behind, and now we find it just as a vice president, keeping it for years out in the open in different locations. I do not think any American believes that justice should not be equal to all. And we found from this administration what happened before every single election, whatever comes out that they utilize to try to falsify it, they try to have different standards for their own beliefs. That doesn't work in America.
That's right. Even playing field now. And we're asking ourselves what they are going to do about this. I mean, because we know that the special counsel that they appointed to go investigate Donald Trump
We begin tonight
is
with former
very
President Trump.
aggressive, right? He's already out there, according to ABC News published on January 11th, the special counsel who's going after El Trumpo is issuing subpoenas and is conducting grand juries for Trump associates, going after everybody, just like another kind of, pseudo J6 committee. Within the last month, according to ABC News, multiple associates of former President Trump received new, wide-ranging subpoenas from special counsel Jack Smith, requesting documents and records far more expansive than the previous outreaches that these individuals have gotten from the DOJ before, right? Escalating. Things are ramping up. They're going after Trump even harder. The subpoenas, which were described to ABC News by sources who received them, include questions about fundraising efforts and talking points leading up to the J6 attack on the U.S. Capitol. Which is very interesting because I thought the scope of his representation was about the documents. So I don't know what he's asking about J6 for. Special counsel is also requesting information on how individuals are paying for their legal representation, something that came into question when others were investigated. Special counsel seeking information about the super PAC. So they're just going after Trump, right? One special counsel's doing that. So the question is, will Robert Hur do the same thing? Will this individual, the man that we read a little bit more about his bio, this guy has been appointed to go after or to investigate Biden. We'll see what he does there. Now, final clip from Kevin McCarthy is a little bit of a mic drop moment. A lot of people are asking whether the Republicans are going to do anything about any of this, because for a long time, they haven't been. But now Kevin McCarthy has the gavel. And Kevin says that there are going to be repercussions for this because decisions will be made.
Question. No, right here. I'll go too quick. You both, but you go first. No, let her go first. Let her go first.
That Congress has a priority to investigate Biden's handling of classified documents, but
yes,
you don't think that Congress has a priority to investigate Trump's handling of classified documents?
Well, what's an interesting question to me.
Question was, why do you think it's a priority to investigate Joe, but not Trump?
Yes. They put a special prosecutor on that. They raided Mar-a-Lago when he was gone. They came in with sirens and everything else. Even though they had already met, they knew it was there. They said, put another lock on. They put another lock on it. Had they asked, they could have just picked it up. But why would they do that? Why would they go after a political opponent that way? Why would they leak photos and say all this? Why would they go through the former First Lady's clothing? Why would they go through his son's clothing? Why would they?
Because they're
raid in the
disgusting
manner which
monsters,
they did?
that's why.
At the same time, prior to an election, you found a sitting president when he was vice president with top secret documents. Why did they handle that differently? We're in America.
Weaponization.
We believe in equal justice. Why did they not even tell America that that transpired? How did he sit before 60 Minutes knowing what he had done? How do we find out a second location and he's shocked by it? Why aren't you asking him these questions? Why doesn't he come forth to the American public? We don't think there needs to be a special prosecutor, but I think Congress has a role to look. Yes,
last question.
Have you ever used a lawyer or attorney to clean out and move your office?
Question. Mr. Kevin McCarthy, have you ever used a lawyer to move your office furniture from one office to another? Seems kind of a weird thing to do.
A lawyer or attorney to clean up. I have a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what point you're trying to get at, so help me further on the question.
Well, Mr. Biden said he sent his lawyers to move his office, so I'm wondering if that's...
No, I use my hands and my own, so I think it's kind of, I think if you call a lawyer to remove something for your office, he must have known ahead of time. So I think he has a lot of the answers to the American public. The good thing about that is the American public has a Congress that can get the answers. Thank you all.
Boom! A mic drop, drops the mic, and walks off the stage. The good news is Americans now have a Congress that's going to do something about it.
The good thing about that is the American public has a Congress that can get the answers. Thank you all. I hope you have a great weekend.
Boom. Nice job, Kev. Well done. We like to see the energy. Keep up the energy. Hopefully the actions, the results match the rhetoric, because we would like to see it. And I do have some questions for the media and for Biden and for, America, the future of America. Remember, these are classified secrets, man. These are top secret. There could be nuclear codes in there. You might not know what letters have been interacted back and forth between Joe and who else knows. We have to get to the bottom of this. We have to drop everything and make sure we get justice. And of course, we will continue to cover this bad boy. And I hope you join us as we do. Thank you for subscribing wherever it is you're watching. Thank you for sharing this channel with your friends and family, inviting them over here to join us, or for sharing a short video that we do so that they can see some of the actions and fun that we have here. And we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. All right, my friends. So that was a heavy update on the Biden confidential documents saga. And there will be a lot more to come. You can see even the media is upset about this, which is a lot of fun. So we'll continue to cover it. But for today, we are going to change gears. We've got a whole slew of Twitter files to dive into. They just dropped via Matt Taibbi. And so let's get these puppies queued up and get right to business, because we're going to have to get to these. And there's a lot of good stuff here. So right now is the time. Twitter Files 14 just dropped. We've got the RussiaGate hoax that we're going to dive into today. You can see they came over from our friend Matt Taibbi, and they feature front and center Pencil Neck Watermelon Head, the gentleman that you just saw on your screen right here. He's going to be front and center in many of these files. And so let's go right into it. Twitter Files 14 from Matt Taibbi on Twitter at @MTaibbi. The RussiaGate lies. 1. The fake tale of Russian bots and the hashtag release the memo. Release the memo hashtag. Matt writes, at a crucial moment in a years-long furor, Democrats denounced a report about flaws in the Trump-Russia investigation, saying it was boosted by Russian bots and trolls. We remember the Democrats are very unhappy with Donald Trump. They have been saying that his election was illegitimate. People like Hakeem Jeffries were saying there needs to be an inquiry. In prior Twitter files, we had all sorts of pressure from Adam Schiff and others on the big tech platforms to give them answers that they needed. Matt tells us Democrats were very unhappy with Twitter. Twitter officials were aghast. In fact, they found no evidence of Russian influence at all. Here's a letter. On January 26, 2018, this went over to several people from Congress. You can see it is sent to Dianne Feinstein and Adam Schiff, 2 members of Congress, 1 senator, 1 House. The letter from Twitter, this is 2018, 2 years after Trump takes office. 1 year. Says, Dear Senator Feinstein and Representative Schiff, Twitter says, thank you for your letter regarding trending hashtags and concerns over Russian disinformation. Mr. Dorsey has asked me to respond to the issues you raised. Twitter is deeply committed to protecting the integrity of the democratic process, and we value Congress's interest in understanding the role of social media in Russian disinformation efforts. Twitter says to Congress, as we have indicated previously, Twitter has conducted an extensive inquiry into Russian interference in 2016. We also to continue to strengthen our fight against malicious automation and coordinated efforts. We've already told you guys our work addressing this activity has yielded significant progress. One example is Twitter has established a quality team which now focuses on these things. But with respect to our analysis of a particular hashtag, we welcome the opportunity to share some findings with you. They say, we performed a preliminary analysis on a hashtag called Release the Memo. And they have highlighted here, our initial inquiry based on available data has not identified any significant activity connected to Russia with respect to tweets posting original content to this hashtag. All right. Hey, Congress people, we know you want us to manufacture this fake narrative. We did an analysis on hashtag Release the Memo. No Russian activity. Another email came out January 23rd, 2018, 11:30 in the morning. says, this is from so-and-so to other people. It says, I think Lauren is right. He's putting the cart before the horse and assuming this is propaganda and bots, right? The memo, the hashtag. You can tell him that our very preliminary assessment is that not much of this is inorganic activity. Ask him to please let us understand the facts before jumping ahead to try to address it, right? They're unhappy with that hashtag. They say, we are feeding congressional trolls. They are sending us letters harassing us. They want us to censor the hashtag. So Twitter warned politicians and the media that they not only lacked evidence, says Matt, but they had evidence that the accounts weren't even Russian. They're not Russian. On January 18th, Republican Devin Nunes submitted a classified memo. This went over to the House Intel Committee. Said the FBI is abusing and obtaining FISA surveillance authority against Trump-connected figures, including the infamous Steele dossier, which is something we talked a lot about here extensively in the Michael Sussman trial saga. You see here, this is an unclassified memo. Subject says Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act abuses at the DOJ and the FBI, declassified by Trump, February 2, 2018. It says this memo provides members an update on the DOJ, FBI, and their abuse of FISA during the 2016 presidential elections. And they raise a whole slew of concerns. All of the courts, all of the FBI, right? There were many different things being manipulated to go spy on Trump campaign and Trump advisors. It was rampant. Nunes' assertions would be verified later. Michael Horowitz released a report December 2019 that highlighted a couple of these features. Says that there were potentially serious problems with Michael Steele's description of Trump. And to catch everybody up, remember there were all sorts of allegations that Trump was colluding with the Russians. Trump was engaging, Michael Steele was talking to Ambassador Viselyak, the Russians, saying, just hold on a minute, like don't do anything until we get into office. And this was just sort of a routine call that happens during a presidential transition. They turned it into a giant thing. They said that Trump was getting money from the Kremlin. They were using Yoda phones and laundering all sorts. It was all made up. Jake Sullivan at the time, who went to Oxford, was working for Hillary Clinton as a campaign advisor, and Michael Sussman was working at Perkins Coie, which is where Mark Elias used to work, and Sussman was colluding with Jim Baker. Jim Baker used to work at the FBI as general counsel before he left there and went over to Twitter, right? It's a big, disgusting web. And so they say, yeah, there were potentially serious problems with that Steele dossier, which was manufactured and given over to Michael Sussman through Fusion GPS. Michael Sussman took that to the FBI, and that was the basis for, a lot of the Trump-Russia collusion investigation. Could have been some serious problems with how the FBI handled that. You think? Yeah. Among other things, regarding the allegations, the primary subsource's account, if true, was not consistent with anything else. In fact, it was contradicted by other things. That comes from the Inspector General, right? So they are debunking the legitimacy of any of these original allegations. Not true. Trump didn't do any of that stuff. Nevertheless, the national media in January and February of 2018, they denounced the Nunes report. They called it a joke. Nunes came out and the OIG came out and they said this was all a hoax. They were trying to throw Trump under the bus by making this manufactured narrative. And the media got their copy and paste talking points. You can see MSNBC came out. 2 ex-DOJ officials on the Nunes memo, a bad joke. Oh, yeah. We had another one here. Andrea Mitchell's Nunes has turned the House Intel Committee, quote, into a joke, right? This is what happens all the time. The Nunes memo is out. It's a joke and a sham by Greg Sargent and Paul Waldman. These are all copy and pasters, okay? Joe Concha, he gets an email or, Slack message or a Telegram message or whatever. They just copy and paste it from their Discord channel right onto their WordPress engine. It goes public. Here's another one. Ex-RNC chairman rips Nunes for the joke that it is. Copy, paste, one after another. But then after that, on January 23rd, Senator Dianne Feinstein from California, along with Pencil Neck Schiff, published an open letter saying that the hashtag gained the immediate attention and the assistance of social media accounts linked to Russian influence operations. Well, that's weird because Twitter said that's not true at all. So why would these Congress people be lying to everybody in America? Let's see what this letter says. Well, can't really read that. It's not all that detailed. This says, according to the German Marshall Fund's Alliance for Securing Democracy, this effort gained the attention of Russian influence operations. In their press release, they request Twitter and Facebook, these two government officials, okay, this is the government acting, extending their disgusting hands into private sector businesses and telling them what to do or else. You're telling me Congress requests a private investigation? What happens if you don't find what they want? What happens to your company? So they just request Twitter and Facebook conduct an investigation into the Russian bot activity in Release the Memo campaign. They say if these reports are accurate, we're witnessing the ongoing attack by the Russian government through Kremlin-linked social media actors directly to interfere and influence our democratic process. So they say, dear Mr. Dorsey and dear Mr. Zuckerberg, we request your assistance. This has gained the immediate attention of Russian influence. Thank you, Dianne Feinstein and pencil neck Adam Schiff down at the bottom. So they know that that's not really what's happening because Twitter has told them that in a letter to both of them that Matt Taibbi provided to us. You see, this letter was on January 26th. Not identified any significant activity. January 26, 2018. That was actually after. This is on January 23rd, 2018. They're saying, so there's this ongoing conversation. It looks like Twitter tells them that after they release the memo. They're saying that this distorts all sorts of information. They say Republican. So get ready for this to happen again, okay? The Republicans are going to be facing this battle again. The Democrats are going to say this exact same stuff to Kevin McCarthy and to Matt Gaetz and to Jim Jordan. It's going to be the same script. So just brace yourself for it. Specifically, they say the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence is providing misleading talking points authored by Republican staff that distorts highly classified information, right? It's going to be the same talking points. We also see that when the Nunes memo came out, a senator from Connecticut called Richard Blumenthal sent another letter out, and he's responding to the memo. He said here, we find it reprehensible that this is being manipulated to interfere with the democratic processes. And they're all referencing this other entity called the Alliance for Saving Democracy as an entity that is providing them with details. Taibbi continues, says, Feinstein, Schiff, and Blumenthal, this little Democratic tripart, and media members are all pointed to the same source, the Hamilton 68 dashboard, created by former FBI counterintelligence official Clint Watts, under the auspices of the Alliance for Securing Democracies. So they find a fake source rather than Twitter. Release the memo, according to this, is now the top trending hashtag among Russian Twitter bots and trolls on Twitter. This is according to the Hamilton 68 website, right? That's what they're referencing in their official government memos. Somebody said, I've never seen any single hashtag that has had this much of activity behind it. An analyst who helps run the Hamilton 68 dashboard. It tracks about 600 accounts that are tied to Russians. Release the memo is the top trending hashtag among Twitter accounts linked to Russian influence, according to the Hamilton 68 website. So all of them are referencing this authority to say that this is Russian instituted. But we know that though Hamilton 68 launched just last summer, Morgan said he felt comfortable making that claim because it peaked from one percentage to another percent. All right. Now, if you go on the dashboard of this platform from the Hamilton 68 dashboard, they tell us that there was a picture of Vladimir Putin, who is releasing the bad Twitter birds into the Twitter sphere, saying, go out there, disinformation bots, and just go wreck the world. That's Vladimir Putin. And you can see that they have the Alliance for Securing Democracy, which is the entity that is going to be securing democracy. And we're very fortunate that we have these people in this alliance to protect us. Lord knows we would otherwise have no democracy. Now, Taibbi says, look, inside of Twitter, executives panned Watts and Hamilton 68 and the Alliance for Securing Democracy. So Matt this is developing here in front of us, and we see that there are these two sort of worlds. We have Twitter, and we have all of these other authorities called Watts, Hamilton 68, Alliance for Securing Democracy. Twitter says there's not really much Russian influence at all. Actually, we're not even too concerned about it. We did an analysis. Everything looks fine. But that's not the right answer for the Democrats. They need some other authority so they can write their memos and they can push the companies to get better answers so that they then can interface with them by putting Elvis Chan right up their sphincter in San Francisco. So this whole situation is, you can see sort of bifurcating into these two sides, these two camps, government plus these think tanks versus Twitter. There's some emails back and forth. We see that inside Twitter, executives didn't like those organizations. There were two key complaints. Hamilton seemed to be everyone's only source, and no one was checking with Twitter. Of course they weren't, because Twitter was giving them the wrong answers that we saw at the start of the thread. That there is no problem. Hamilton says, oh, there's a major problem. So which one is Pencil Neck Schiff going to pick? There are some emails going back and forth. You see this one is drafted. An original email was sent January 23rd, 2018, 8:49 a.m. It says, thanks both. You know, this is also a comms play for ASD. They've made a very strong media push in the last week, piggybacking on Clint's testimony. We should have a separate discussion about if, when, and how we confront ASD privately with our knowledge of their flaw. ASD is going to be the Alliance for Saving Democracy, right? The heroes of the planet. The people who wake up every day, look at themselves in the mirror, and they say, you're going to save democracy today. You can do it. I'm all for affirmations, but these people are, they're not going to save democracy. Let me tell you that. It's a comms play for Alliance for Saving Democracy. They made a very strong push in the media, jumping on other testimony. We should have a separate discussion, says Twitter, about how, if, and when we confront them privately with our knowledge of their flawed methodology and their dashboard. They're giving these Congress people bad information. They're like spreading misinformation. These Congress people are literally latching onto it so that they can be reoriented in a more accurate direction. Or do we address it in our response to Schiff and Feinstein? Like, what do we do about this? Also, we need a strategy for Hamilton 68. Let's get through today and we'll circle back on that. Okay, so we have all these like third-party external actors who are breathing down the Twitter employees' necks. This is the government acting upon the private company. This is what makes it a government actor and makes it unconstitutional, when the result of all this activity is the censorship and disenfranchisement of Americans. There's another email. This one came out same day, January 23rd, 2018. There's a bunch of bullet points here. There's a bullet point that says, okay, everybody, listen, I got it all. I got it reordered slightly down below. Here's what we're going to have on the agenda. 1, attributed to a Twitter spokesperson. They say Twitter is committed to addressing malicious activity on our platform, and we take any assertions of such activity very seriously. We're going to work with Schiff and Feinstein. Now they say, also, we've been monitoring hashtag release the memo, and they appear to be organic. We've not seen any indications that accounts engaging in this are predominantly Russian or that Russian accounts are driving this. It all appears to be organic. Lots of conservative Twitter accounts are using one or both of these hashtags, including Donald Trump Jr., Steve King, Mark Meadows, many others. There's a lot of retweets and organic engagement. Everybody wants to see the memo. We'll have more in our official response, but they say, off the record, I encourage you to be skeptical. This is from Twitter, to be skeptical of Hamilton 68's take on this, which, as best as I can tell, is the only source for these stories. Hamilton 68 does not release the accounts that make up their dashboard, so nobody can even verify that they are, in fact, Russian. Oh, wow. So they're producing results and you can't even see how they were produced. 2, it's extraordinarily difficult for outside researchers who don't have access to our data to do anything. If you speak to them, I encourage you to press them on how they can be so sure of these claims when they don't have access to our same data. Well, it's probably because it's not a real entity. It's a government operation. It says from Matt, another email, January 24th, 8:20 in the morning. This one comes from Yoel Roth. We remember him. Says, okay, listen, everybody, another thought. Is now the time we go public with the fact that any given user counts only count once towards a trend? Says, given all the swirl around this hashtag release the memo, it's based on Hamilton, which is that third-party dashboard. That's based on raw tweet count. We'd be able to broadly refute it without actually sharing anything too sensitive. So I'd suggest something along the lines of, we have these algorithms. We saw this many users, X times Y times Z equals Q percentage. And also, we've got tweet decks and all of these other things. Okay, so he's explaining why their numbers are trash. Yoel Roth, the former head of Trust and Safety. And they say if the Alliance for Democracy isn't going to check any things with us, we should correct the record. This email comes from Carlos. He says, this is regarding read and respond to Feinstein and Schiff, another January 23rd email. Carlos says, listen, we should reach out privately to maintain the relationship. All right. Don't put out a public press release to blast these people publicly. Instead, though, let's just talk to them in behind closed doors. But he says, if ASD, the Alliance for Saving Democracy, if they're not going to fact check anything, we should feel free to correct the record on their work, right? If they're just going to put out garbage out there in the ether, we should be able to respond and correct it. Yoel Roth was also out. January 24th, he says, look, I think we can, in fact, push back on this Russian stuff. I just reviewed the accounts that posted the first 50 tweets with hashtag release the memo. And while a few of them definitely look spammy, none of them have signs of being tied to Russia. We can very easily produce a number like we did for Brexit. We found less than X percentage of accounts tweeting this hashtag. We could go deeper, but there's no reason to go deeper, is what Yoel says. 18, Matt says, another email came out. Here's their conclusion. TLDR, too long, didn't read. They're summarizing the whole synopsis, they say. Schiff and Feinstein have released a statement calling on us to investigate what ASD Hamilton says is Russian bots driving the hashtag release the memo. And they want a report submitted by 1/26. Congress is demanding that Twitter abide by their timelines, calling us to investigate and submit a report by Friday, 1/26. Yoel and the team have been monitoring the engagement on this for hashtag release the memo and hashtag Schumer shutdown, and engagement appears to be organic. It's not driven by Russian bots. Com started getting media inquiries on hashtag release the memo last Friday when Advocacy for Saving Democracy Alliance issued a press release saying that there were Russian bots coming from these accounts. But we investigated these. We found engagement was overwhelmingly organic and driven by strong engagement. WikiLeaks, Trump Jr., King, and others. And because the initial wave of news coverage did not include us, reporters who did initially reach out to Twitter ran with ASD as a single source. We've been in reactive mode ever since. Comms has been pushing back on background, cautioning off the record on why reporters should be very skeptical of those Russian bot claims. ASD does not know that we've reverse engineered their dashboard, and we're being careful not to hint at this in our pushback. Wow. So Twitter can actually see what they're looking at. Be very skeptical of them. Reminder, ASD does not know that we have reverse engineered their dashboard, and we're being careful to not hint at this. The corporate espionage going on there. We were just starting to see virtually identical pattern play out with Schumer shutdown. Then we got press releases about that too. So they know there are no issues here at all. Now, a staffer for Dianne Feinstein, DeFi, agreed that it would be, quote, helpful to know how Hamilton identifies these accounts. But this was only after Feinstein published her letter, right? They don't actually care about the accounts. They care about the narrative. So there's a letter from Carlos. On Tuesday, it says, I had a good follow-up conversation with DeFi's staffer. That's Dianne Feinstein's staffer. FYI, we built a very good relationship through this, despite her boss being DeFi. So this person's very nice. Shout out to this nice lady who's working for Dianne. Probably a miserable job. I floated the idea of them asking for these groups for 1, accounts they're tracking, 2, the process by which they decide an account is a Russian influencer. She made no promises, but she is trying to get folks on board. She agreed that it would be helpful to know this info. This is great. That is something of that that's something that Blumenthal's guy said too. GMF is less about bots and more about Russians. Now this continues. Taibbi says, when Twitter spoke to a Blumenthal staffer, who's another senator, they tried to wave him off because we don't believe these are bots. Carlos writes, okay, here's a smaller group. Blumenthal staffer called because he wanted to send a follow-up letter to Schiff and Feinstein, saying that if the release the memo trend was Russian bots, Twitter should do another user notice to the victims. We had a real convo. I tried to wave him off this particular storyline because we don't actually believe these are bots, right? Another senator is pushing back on Twitter. Carlos says, they're not bots. They're not Russian bots. They're real people. I said that Twitter spent a lot of resources to respond to the initial request. I thanked him for reaching out, said I understand his bosses were looking for another press hit. I said I would ask the team if there's something easier they could ask for. We can't deliver the news that you want. And the reward from Blumenthal shouldn't be round after round of requests. It doesn't fix the problems. It distracts our teams from the real fight. I told you, I feel bad. I think Carlos was the guy I felt bad for last time. You know, Carlos is trying to like run, do his job. I don't know what his politics are. Don't really care. But his at this moment in time, he's got all these Congress people breathing down his neck. Get me the data. There is no data. And now it's Blumenthal, in addition to Schiff, in addition to Feinstein. Somebody else, Lauren, said, without saying it directly, it might be worth nudging Blumenthal's staffer, saying that since we have been monitoring this from the get-go and have little reason to believe it's a big Russian propaganda movement, it could be in his boss's best interest to not go out there on this because it could come back to make him look silly. Oh boy, poor Lauren. She had no idea who she's talking about. If they can't find the evidence, they'll just make it up. Obviously, very naive. Again, I would do this in a nuanced way if you go this path. It hits at the hubris, the driver of these public calls. Tell them to stop asking us to manufacture material. Taibbi continues, he says, one Twitter executive even tried to negotiate, implying an undisclosed future PR concession if Blumenthal would lay off on this. A letter went out January 23rd, 11:25. One more. If we flood right now with additional notice, it undermines the value of the direct notice. People will not take this seriously if we do it again. We want the conversation to continue on the notice we sent. Could we consider flagging that our numbers go up? Look, consider this. There's a DC strategy question I can't speak to, but it seems like there are other ways that we can win if we can offer him some other things. There are other wins we can offer him. And say, please emphasize the detrimental effects of demanding this again right now, okay? Tell Blumenthal, we'll give you other things, but you keep repeating this and demanding more on this is actually hurting you, it's hurting us. They're demanding stuff that we can't give you. Matt says, doesn't matter at all. Blumenthal doesn't care. Again, it's not about the story. It's not about the facts, it's about the story. Blumenthal published the letter anyways. In 24, Taibbi says, executives eventually grew frustrated over what they saw as a circular process. They were presented with claims of Russian activity. Even when they denied it, it led to more claims. Government says the Russians are on your platform. Twitter says no, they aren't. They say yes, they are. They say no, they aren't. They told this to Senator Blumenthal. They said, look, Twitter expends a ton of time and resources. On January 23rd, Collins sent this over. Says, I think we can try to follow up with Blumenthal again. But the bottom line is that we can't do a user notice each time this happens, okay? Let's huddle on this, on how we can tap KG to help us on Blumenthal. Carlos and I can reach out next week. Carlos also says Tuesday, the 23rd. All right, listen. Blumenthal staffer called because he wanted to send a follow-up to the Schiff letter. He says, I tried to wave him off and Twitter spent a lot of resources on this. And so don't come back round after round for request after request. Eventually, Twitter staff realizes the following. On January 23rd, they say, Carlos writes, you know, Colin may have more to say on this, but based on my experience with him at DOT, Blumenthal isn't always looking for real and nuanced solutions. He doesn't want facts. He doesn't want solutions. He wants to get credit for pushing us further. He wants to get credit for pushing us further. And he may move on only when the press moves on. He wants to crack the shell, open the door, so that the government can basically commandeer Twitter, as we saw they did. Ultimately, senior executives talked about feeding congressional trolls, and they compared the situation to a children's book, you know, if you give a mouse a cookie. Lauren said, this has become, quote, if you give a mouse a cookie with members of Congress. Children's book reference. Don't know that I ever read the book, but I'm asking the mouse asks for a glass of milk. Here it is. Thank you, Matt, for bringing the story to our attention. Here it is in the story. If you want a mouse, if you give a mouse a cookie, he'll want a glass of milk, which will lead the wave to other exhausting requests, at the end of which he'll want a glass of milk and one more cookie. Here's the book. Oh, actually, this is a play brought to you in 2006, 2007. If you give a mouse a cookie, says the child sitting on a rock, he's going to ask for a glass of milk. And then this child, in the moral of the story, looks like he gives the mouse a glass of milk. What a very good boy. Now, this is very similar to what happened with Twitter. The government is like the mouse. Twitter gave the mouse a cookie. Before long, Twitter was inside the house sleeping with the wife at Twitter HQ. Totally inappropriate. That little boy's like, what the heck just happened here? That escalated quickly. But that's what happened. Now, Matt says the metaphor for the endless Russia request was so perfect that one executive wrote, I'm legit embarrassed that I didn't think of that first. Says, I like that approach. Seems like a recipe for conspiracy theories. Release the Twitter attachment. Can we do a simple letter and tell them that any explanations we don't want publicly, orally? I'm legit embarrassed I didn't think of that first. Now, Matt says, despite universal internal conviction that there were no Russians in the story, Twitter went on to follow a slavish pattern of not challenging Russia on the record. Outside counsel from DC-connected firms like Debwe Va and Plimpton advised Twitter to use language like this, quote, with respect to particular hashtags, we take seriously any activity that may represent an abuse of our platform. Perfect legalese. Here's what they say. With respect to particular hashtags in your letter, use that in your phrase. Don't add any fuel to the fire. Tell them, this is a lawyer saying, okay, tell them this in your response. Tell them, we thank Congress for your leadership. We want to be an industry leader. We proactively notify users, and we take seriously any activity that may represent an abuse of our platform. Perfect legalese. That letter probably cost $2,000. Now, Matt continues. He says, as a result, reporters from the AP, Politico, Rolling Stone, everybody, they continue to spam, copy, paste, all of the Russia story. Russian Twitter accounts push hashtag release the memo conservative meme. That came over from Tom at the Associated Press. This one also published. Tracking influence campaigns. U.S. News. Nail in the coffin for the Nunes memo. It's all being promoted by Russian bots. What's the conspiracy behind the right-wing meme? No. Russians weren't just blamed for the release of the memo. They were blamed for a lot of other things, but also the Schumer shutdown and the Parkland shooting and gun control now. All were being demanded to be investigated. Here is an email, January 23rd, 2018. All right, got all reordered slightly. Both hashtags appear to be organically trending. NBC, Politico, AP, Times, Business Insider, other media outlets, they all declined to comment for this story, says Matt. He says the staff of Feinstein, Blumenthal, Schiff, and others, they also declined to comment. Nunes did comment, though. He said that Schiff and the Democrats falsely claimed that Russians were behind the release of the memo hashtag. All my investigative work, by spreading the Russia collusion hoax, they instigated one of the greatest outbreaks of mass delusion in U.S. history. Matt says this release the memo hashtag episode is just one of many in the Twitter files. The RussiaGate scandal was built on the craven dishonesty of politicians and reporters who for years ignored the absence of data, the fictional scare headlines. For more, he says, there will be more coming. Follow all of the appropriate parties there. And he reminds us that Twitter has no editorial input on this story. Searches were carried out by third parties. And that is it for Twitter Files 14 from Matt Taibbi, showing us that multiple senators were literally sending emails and demands through their staffers from Twitter to silence conservative hashtags that they didn't like. And so there will certainly be more to come from the Twitter Files. We will continue to cover it. Thank you for joining in wherever it is you are tuning in from, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. All right, my friends. Well, before we jump into your comments and your questions, let me remind you about our amazing friends over at 4Patriots, because as you know, food shortage could be coming here. Even in the United States, they've been talking about this as recently as last year in July. We've got drought, inflation, new policies. America's food supply is reaching its breaking point. That's why survival food is more important now than ever. And you can create your own stockpile of the best-selling 4Patriots survival food kits ever. You can go to 4patriots.com and get this amazing food. It's not ordinary. We're talking about good for 25 years super survival food. This stuff is hand-packed in family-owned facilities in the United States. It gives jobs to over 200 Americans. And the kits, they're compact, they're water-resistant. They stack easily. They've got different delicious breakfast, lunches, and dinners. And you can make these meals in less than 20 minutes. All you have to do is add boiling water, simmer, and serve. And right now, you can go to 4patriots.com. Use code Robert to get 10% off anything in the store, including this 3-month survival kit that is amazing. And you'll get their famous guarantee for an entire year after your order, plus free shipping on anything that's over $97. They're called 4Patriots because a portion of every sale is donated to charities who support our veterans and their families. And you can go to 4patriots.com, the website right on your screen. Use code Robert to save 10% off your first order and start building your stockpile today. All right, my friends. And so that is it for the program on the day. And we covered a lot of ground. We went through all of the Twitter files, and we saw more disgusting boots on the neck of America from our federal government through people like Pencil Neck Schiff, Dianne Feinstein, and Blumenthal, who looks like Jack Skellington. We also had a lot of McCarthy updates. We heard from Karine Jean-Pierre. We saw Joe Biden try to explain away this confidential document saga. And we know that this timeline is looking very, very suspect over there. And a new special prosecutor will help us, hopefully, untangle it all out there in the White House. But my friends, now it is time to hear from you and to see what you have to say about all of this and more. Before we jump over to our watchingthewatchers.locals.com after party, let's do a refresh and say hi to our YouTube super chat friends. I saw a couple of those come in. I'm grateful for those super chats. We had one or two come in today. And the first one in the house is from Timothy Anderson. He says, would love a lawyer to break down how 44 U.S. Code 22053 works in tandem with 2207 regarding a vice president versus a former POTUS. That is from Timothy Anderson. And that is a heavy legal question right there. I don't know either of those statutes offhand. But as you heard in that audio, we just took a screenshot of that. And so it's an interesting question. I actually don't recognize either of those statutes. So I want to look those up before I start rambling off on them. But I have taken a screenshot of your question. And let's see if we can follow up on that tomorrow. I'm sure it's going to come into play. But you're asking a very specific question. So thank you for that. Exceptions to, here, just briefly, exceptions to restricted access. Here you go. So you're asking about an exception. The presidential records shall be available to former presidents and designated representatives. Notwithstanding any restrictions, the archivists. Okay, so it's about access to presidential records. Well, I thought that the Presidential Records Act, I'll look it up. Interesting question. Thank you very much, Timothy, for it. Yeah, it'll be very interesting. We're going to be spending a lot of time on these statutes, so this will be a good one to learn more about. Thank you, Timothy, for sending that in. All right. Geomancy is here. He says, grifting for a shout out. Love you, Rob. Grift away, Geo. We all got to do it. And Geomancy is, of course, sending in a super chat, but he's also over on YouTube and he's also over on Locals. And so if you're interested in additional content, talking a lot about these things, I know that Geo's channel was originally, there was some gaming stuff on there. And here's what Geo says. Love you, Rob. This community continues to give me life and passion, and I hope one day to be the most righteous father I can be. Well, we're here for you, Geo, and I know that you're working hard, my friend, and I appreciate you being a part of the community and showing up here with some good energy. And I hope your community is growing nicely and beautifully, and I hope that you go and support Geo Mancy on YouTube. Good to see you, Geo. Thank you for the super chat, for sending that one in. Big Bad Bra says, now that the House is going after him, they're separating themselves from him. His attorneys want to make this the center of attention because the can of worms being opened is way beyond damage control. Yeah, you know, I've seen a lot of people saying stuff like that, right? Like, this is all just a distraction. They want to use this to ace him out, you know, confidential documents. All right, you're gone. Trump's gone. You're gone. And that would be a better reason for Joe Biden to be shown the exit than, you know, unveiling mounds of, you know, Hunter, Ukraine, China evidence that it also involves the rest of the politicians, you know. So it's sort of like the sacrificial lamb. We always thought that Biden was going to be the sacrificial lamb. You know, just get the first one past the finish line until they can't prop him up anymore. And then it's just right out the ejection hatch. Adios. Funk. He's just gone. All right. So CA Human says, true. Special counsel Robert Hur signed the FISA warrant. Isn't this a conflict? Thank you for clarification. Oh, that's I don't know about that one. That's a great question. So that's sort of what I was talking about, CA Human, with the Rod Rosenstein stuff, right? Because he was, I think, Rod Rosenstein was very involved in all that FISA stuff, right? Rosenstein appointed Robert Mueller as special counsel to investigate the ties between Trump and Russia. And that's, CA Human exact. I don't know if Robert Hur signed that, you know, a FISA warrant or any FISA warrant or what his involvement was. But I did notice that in his bio that he did have some history working for Rod Rosenstein. Rod Rosenstein was very involved in a lot of the Trump-Russia stuff. Yeah, so I don't know exactly how that interfaces, but yes, they're all intertwined. Now, again, is there a conflict there? We'd have to take a look. Not really. I don't think so, because that's Trump. That's Trump. That's kind of a different issue. That's like Trump-Russia hoaxing, collusion stuff. This is an investigation of Biden for classified documents, which is a separate issue. I don't think that they're interrelated. And I don't think he has any ethical obligations to any of them. The question might be, is he politically biased? But that wouldn't be enough to really conflict him off a case. It's a great question, CA Human. I don't know. But I caught that too. I noticed that I saw that Rod Rosenstein name, and I thought, oh, very interesting how all of this works. Bruce Leroy says Blumenthal lied about serving in Vietnam. Is that true? I didn't know that. He's an interesting fella. Hasn't he also been around for like 200 years? He looks like it. Let's see. Max Blumenthal. Right, that's his name. Is that him, or is that a journalist? No, it's Senator Richard Blumenthal. That's who it is. From Connecticut. Held his seat since 2011. All right, so not that long. Probably in Congress before that. One term back in 1985. Yeah, this guy here. Goodness. Why is this not wanting to? There he is. That's Richard Blumenthal. The guy who wants to censor all sorts of information and illegal Russian hashtags. That's the guy. All right. And that came in from Bruce Leroy. Thank you very much, Bruce, for sending that one in. I appreciate all of the super chat support that our very generous friends send over. We also had Shifra Lynn, who sent in a locals tip, which says, love it that I made it to a live stream. We're grateful that you made it, Shifra Lynn. Sometimes I know that doesn't happen. Sometimes I know it's hard to make it to these, but it's always better when we're here and doing it together, isn't it? I saw a Rumble rant that I am trying to queue up and find. Here, this one is from EXSSFD, says the following. Says, Rob, if all the documents lead to removal of Biden, Harris becomes POTUS. Who would become VP? This could lead to what party having the tie-breaking vote? Well, the Democrats have 51, right, in the Senate now. So I don't think that the tie-breaking vote is an issue. But if Harris becomes vice president, doesn't she, how did it work with Ford? You appoint a vice president and then the Senate confirms them? See if we can. Yeah, the president appoints a new vice president. Okay, so 25th Amendment says that the new president appoints the new vice president. And then I think both houses have to appoint. It's the 25th Amendment, whatever that says. So I think it's Kamala would then appoint the next person, and then both houses would have to confirm that new vice president, I think is the answer to that. Great question. From EXSSFD over on Rumble. And I think that's it for the super chats and the tips and the Rumble rants, my friends. I'm very grateful for all of your support here as we continue to cover all of the news. Red One just became a supporter on our YouTube member, and Red One was gifting a bunch of memberships out and wasn't even a supporter. What a generous fellow. Thank you very much, Red One. Red One earlier in the week gave out a bunch of memberships to our community, and so that's awesome. We've got new members who can join in, and we do member morning live streams where we hit the headlines, 20, 30 minutes. We do what's going on today? What's Biden's schedule? What's the congressional schedule? What are we sharing on locals? What's the topic of the day? Just to kind of carry on the conversation after the show ends. It's a lot of fun. So thank you to Red One for bringing some more members to our community. And also says, great show, Rob. Thank you very much, Red One. It's very generous of you. Yeah, and we have some fun over there. It's a little bit more casual, This show, as we do it here, it's kind of, we try to compress a lot in. We try to put a lot of information in, go through the clips relatively quickly. so that you can condense a lot of the news in a day. You know, I know everybody's busy. You don't want to sit here for 8 hours. I mean, 2 hours is like long enough. But anyways, that's the point. But we get to sort of slow things down for our members and our supporters everywhere we go, on YouTube and on Locals, not everywhere, only on those two platforms. But that, my friends, I think is about it for us on the day. And so we are going to wrap it up. We're going to go over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com for a little bit of an after party. Before we get out of here, want to thank all of our supporters and sponsors, of course, at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, and our members on YouTube who get basically the same video features minus the community. But watchingthewatchers.locals.com is a great place to be. Also, thank you to our sponsors. And if you're looking for survival food, survival gear, 4patriots.com is the place for you. Go over there, use code Robert, get 10% off anything in the store on your first purchase. You can get solar generators, you can get 90-day food supplies, all sorts of really cool stuff over there at 4patriots.com. Also, Goldco, robertlikesgold.com, great place to go request a free kit, see how you can protect your savings with gold and silver, and it's available at robertlikesgold.com. Of course, our law firm, the R&R Law Group, we're located in Scottsdale, Arizona. We help good people charged with any type of crime in the state of Arizona. Online at rrlawaz.com, and we have a mission, which is to help find safety, clarity, and hope for those who need it. And so that, my friends, is it for us. Big shout outs to our mods who mod down the forts for us. Kiss Prime, we got K-Bean, we got Just Cause is in the house. Shout out to Lean. I see Lean's over there. I see Playing Hooky. What's up, Ronnie Cole? What's up to Zulu, who comes by less frequently nowadays. Geomancy was over on YouTube, and we have some other friends who swing by from time to time, and we are grateful for the mods who mod down the fort for us. We also saw this one come in. A super chat came in, says, "Don't knock me. Law school is Don't knock me. Law school is expensive, as I'm sure you know. I didn't get student loan forgiveness like promised." Oh, from Biden? Were you relying on that promise? Well, we'll see. You know, they keep pushing those loan repayment back like indefinitely. I don't know what they're going to do about that. I don't know what, honestly, like, are they going to return on loan payments for all of the students out there? Do you have any defaults they're going to be? Yeah, so it's gonna be another bubble mess. Just get ready for it. But thank you for sending that one in. I appreciate your support. And another one came in from Billy Norton. Thank you very much, Billy. No question on that one, but a very nice dono and a great way to support us. Thank you very much for sending that one in, Billy. Appreciate you. Appreciate Red One. I think John McGarvey just gifted 10 new memberships on YouTube. So it's gonna be total madness over here in our membership community. Thank you, John. Also very generous of you. Yeah, we're getting more people. So more people are joining on the YouTube. When we go live, turn your notifications on because it's not the same time every morning. But more people are joining in on the YouTube. More people are jumping in on the YouTube live streams as members in the morning over on that chat. We've got the Locals chat going. And it's, like I said, it's a lot more casual. It's a little bit more fun. So Just Cause says, check the gifted subs, please. John's the man. John is the man. John's the man. Red One's the man. Everybody who's, supporting us. And to our new members, go check out this morning's video. We talked about, some stuff this morning. So we try to keep it fresh. We also do some stuff on the weekends. Like we did we talked movie discussion last weekend. We did the Contact movie with Jodie Foster. Great movie. Love that movie. We talked all about it. Had a great time. So you can come in and join us on that stuff if you're members. So thank you, John. Thank you to Red One for inviting more people over here. And we'll be seeing you. We'll be seeing you tomorrow morning for the morning member live stream in the morning. But my friends, that is it for us on the day. We are going to jump over to Locals for the after party. And I hope to see you there. But if not, hopefully you'll be back here tomorrow for another round of Beautiful Friday. Final shout outs to our friends over on Rumble. We've got Blue Bunny, MNL Hayes. We've got Army Brat. They're saying YouTube's garbage. All right. Come over here, join Locals. Come over to Rumble, join Locals, and join the Rumble chat over there, along with Donut Mind Me, Army Brat, and many others. Our friends over on YouTube, shout out to Brian Reinhart, Maddie Adams, Juanita B's in the house. We've got Spidey Fan, Gasper Ortega, and many others. But that is it for us on the day. We will be back here tomorrow to do it all again. And I hope to see you there so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Have a tremendous evening, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.